Welcome to Robot Unicorn, hosted by my parents, Jess and Scott. I hope you enjoyed the episode.
Hey friends, today I want to answer a listener question for you. And this is a question that I've been getting a lot because, as you know, on Robot Unicorn, we like to talk about tricky topics like puberty, like friendship, like ADHD, and we like to give you scripts and teach you how to talk to your kids about these topics. But something that I've been getting a lot from parents recently is, Jess, what do I do when I'm trying to talk to my child about something, but they shut down, they run away, they get awkward, they get embarrassed, they don't want to talk about it. Parents wonder, like, how hard do I push? How do I have tricky conversations with a kid who just doesn't want to have these conversations? And I got these questions a lot after I recently did a puberty theme over on Nurtured First. And I was giving parents scripts to talk to their kids about periods and erections and other topics like that can feel awkward or uncomfortable. And they were saying they were trying to use these scripts with their kids, but now their kids are embarrassed and not wanting to talk about it. And so I thought, why don't we just give you some tools for these kids who kind of shut down when you're trying to talk about something difficult or uncomfortable? So the first thing that I want to do is just acknowledge that this is likely part of your child's temperament. It's not likely your fault. So give yourself some grace and some compassion. Some kids, especially our more sensitive kids, are wired different and they can sense if something feels uncomfortable. They can sense if you feel uncomfortable, and they like to avoid feeling that discomfort themselves. Sometimes, too, when we come on strong with a topic that's new or they're not really sure about, it might cause their nervous system to become activated, and these kids might have more of a flight. You know, if you think about fight, flight, or freeze, they might be more of like the flight. Like, I'd rather run away, put my head under the covers, not have to deal with this conversation, than have to face it head on. So the exciting part is learning how to tolerate uncomfortable conversations is actually an incredibly important skill for our kids. Not only for the conversations that they have with you that are going to feel uncomfortable, and as they're children, preteens, leading into the teenage, it's really important that they learn how to have uncomfortable conversations with you, because a lot of things are going to come up in their life that are difficult, and you want them to know that you can handle them and your relationship can handle them. So it's actually, always with the reframe, a great time to practice discomfort and having uncomfortable conversations, showing your child that you can handle it. Now, what we don't want to do is force the uncomfortable conversation before your child's ready for it, or make your child so uncomfortable that they never want to talk to you about anything again. So I'm going to give you some things that you can do to help your child build their tolerance to having uncomfortable conversations with you, so that you can eventually start to have these conversations without them running away and hiding. Let me give you 5 ways to come back to a topic. And so whether this topic is something like puberty, sex, something that they did wrong, or a conversation about a family member who's sick, like there's so many conversations that are just tricky to have. I want to talk about that. So the first thing that you can do is what I'm just going to call the comeback. So in the moment, let's say you're saying to your tween son, hey, I want to talk to you about erections. It's really important that you understand it at your age. And he's like, boom, I'm out of here. Like, runs away, hides in his room. He's like, I'm not talking to you about that. Back off at first. Okay, no problem. I understand. It's not the time to talk about it. That's okay. But I do want you to know we're going to come back to this conversation. So don't follow their lead in terms of they say they don't want to talk about it, therefore you're never going to bring it up again. And then just say, well, you never wanted to talk about it, right? Remember that you're in the leadership position. You're the adult here. And if it's something that you know that they have to hear or eventually learn about or talk about, you know that you have to come back to the conversation, but you can just let them know, okay, right now, let's just take off the pressure. We don't have to have this conversation, but I'm ready when you want to have it. And if you don't come back to me saying you're ready for it, I'll bring it back up to you in a couple days or a week or something like that. So what this does is it shows your child, like, I'm not going to push you so hard that you run away or that you can't tolerate it. I know that we can have this conversation. And I might even say that to my child. I might say something like, I know this conversation is tricky. And I might even bring in like a memory. Like, I remember when I was a kid and like my mom was telling me about periods and like I wanted to run away and hide too. It was really uncomfortable and it's hard to have uncomfortable conversations. And then I'd bring it in like, but I know we can handle this. I know we can have this conversation together and I want to. because if I don't teach you about these things, you're going to hear about it from someone else. And I'd rather you hear about it from me first. So I can back off today, but we are going to have this conversation at some point. And so having kind of that coaching, giving them time, so now they have some kind of warning, they kind of know that this conversation might be coming, can help make it easier when you actually have this conversation with them. Now, the next thing that I'm going to suggest, so that's the comeback. So you're going to come back and have that conversation again. Now, when you come back, something that I think is really overwhelming a lot of the time for our kids is when we're trying to have a tricky conversation, but we're like, we must have it face to face, making eye contact this whole time, or I'm hugging you, or I'm holding you. And that can feel really vulnerable for our kids. We're like just staring at them, telling them this thing, like waiting for their reaction. So instead, I might change the setting a little bit. So for example, a car ride is a great time because you're both looking ahead, you're looking at the road, you can have some music playing in the background, and you don't have to be direct eye contact. You can pretend like you're not even looking at them for their reaction, but it can be a really easy way to kind of open up a conversation that feels a little bit less vulnerable. So I would maybe try a car ride. If your child's into things like crafts or puzzling or like cards or something like that, you could even have the conversation just to start like while you're doing something else with your hands. Again, just to make it a little bit less vulnerable so you're not like looking face to face the whole time. Even if your child likes to play something like Mario Kart, like you could sit side by side on the couch and have the conversation. So changing the setting to make it a little bit less vulnerable can be really helpful as well. You also might benefit by starting with a more indirect approach. So let's say you really you're like, I've been trying to tell them this news about this family member and like they won't listen to it. But like I need to tell them that this family member is sick or moving or whatever's happening. And it's like a difficult discussion, right? You might start with like more of like an indirect way about it, like just saying in general, like, oh, I heard Tommy's dad was sick. Like, can you tell me about how you think he's doing? Or you notice it on a show, or maybe if you're driving past a hospital, like you can make a comment about it, but you're not necessarily talking specifically about the situation that's sensitive, but you're going to open up a conversation around something similar that doesn't feel quite as direct, just to kind of ease them into it, get them talking a little bit. And then once they're talking and you have that relationship going and you're in conversation, then you can kind of bring up the more sensitive thing rather than out of the blue directly just being like, da 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 da. That might be helpful. Again, it would be something like noticing it on a show, something that you see on a drive, possibly. Another way to do an indirect approach with something sensitive, let's say like puberty or the sex talk or body safety, that type of thing. You could give them some material and say, hey, like we don't have to talk about this out loud, but let's just read this side by side, right? So that again gives them kind of a chance to process what they're reading and what they're seeing. You're still there with them, like you're communicating, hey, like I want to be part of this for you, but I understand that maybe you need some time to process it in your own head first before talking about it. Hey friends, so at pickup last week, our daughter asked Scott a truly kind of tricky question in front of her younger siblings. Scott was telling me that when he heard a question like this, he used to panic, but this time he had a plan. And he said to our daughter, thank you for asking. Let's talk tonight when we've got privacy. And that's a line that he learned straight from our new body safety and consent course at Nurtured First. So this new body safety and consent course is taught by me. So Jess, if you listen to this podcast, you know me. I'm a child therapist and a mom of 3, and I have taught body safety and consent education for years. This course takes all my years of experience teaching this education and gives you calm, age-appropriate language for body parts, consent, and boundaries. You'll learn how to teach your kids that no means no. You'll learn how to teach them to read facial cues. You'll talk about safe and unsafe touch, and you'll even teach them about their uh-oh feeling. There's guidance inside this course for the real life stuff, like tickling that goes too far, and even the difference between a secret and a surprise. We made this course at Nurtured First because research shows that body safety education helps kids speak up sooner, and we want that for our family, for Scott and I, but also for you. So check the course out at nurturedfirst.com/bodysafety, and to save 10%, use the code ROBOTUNICORN. And just full disclosure here, we are the creators of this course, and we're so proud of it. Now, with that being said, the next thing I would say is don't expect a reaction. So when you're having these difficult conversations with your kids, sometimes why they shut down is because, again, like how I was saying, is you're looking at them and sometimes you're like waiting for their reaction, and that feels overwhelming to them because they're really being perceived and you're just like, tell me exactly how you feel right now. But they might just need a minute just to process, to think about it, to figure out how they even feel. But when you are kind of projecting that you think that they're going to have some big emotional reaction, that can put the pressure on them and make them not want to have the conversation. So you could even preface the conversation by saying like, I'm going to teach you something right now, or I'm going to tell you something that's kind of difficult to hear. And I want you to know, like, I can do the talking. If you have any questions at all, I want to hear them, or comments, or like anything. You feel any sort of way, I want to hear it. But I'm not expecting you to talk to me about it right away. It's okay if you need some time to just process it. That's totally fine. But I do need to tell you this. So sometimes just taking that pressure to have a reaction or to say, oh, or not cry or whatever it is that they might be feeling, taking that off the table can be really helpful for them. Okay. So another tool, and hopefully I'm not overwhelming you with so many tools, but I like to give you a toolbox and then you get to decide what works well and what doesn't work well for your child, and you get to choose which one you want to use. But the 30-second comment. Okay, so this is more so when you're like teaching your child about something that maybe feels awkward or uncomfortable, just saying something quick. Parents will often ask me in terms of body safety, like, do you teach all the information to your kids at the same time? Like trusted people, secrets, no one should touch your private parts, anatomically correct names. And I always say, absolutely not. I like to break it down and I will do like one little comment here and there. And that's how I teach. So it's not necessarily like one big teaching moment. So let's say for puberty, I might say, hey, did you know that when boys go through puberty, they actually get taller and their voice gets lower? That's why sometimes you might hear boys who are like, 13 or so, and their voices are cracking a little bit. It's just because their voices are changing. And I'll just say that in passing, or if I see a teenage boy and we're driving and I see him walking down the road, I might just say that to my kids and then boop, that's it. I don't expect a reaction, but now they know this thing. And if they have questions, they can ask me, but it doesn't have to be this huge sit down, overwhelming conversation. It's just a 30-second comment made in passing, and then it's over and we can move on. So when that happens, it feels less daunting to the parent and to the child, and we can maybe not feel so overwhelmed like we need to run away every time we're having these conversations. The final thing I'm going to say is, if you notice your child's always running away from you when you're trying to have a serious conversation with them, I want you to check your own energy, because they feed off that. If they can tell that you're coming into the conversation angry, heightened, anxious, overwhelmed, nervous, embarrassed, it is going to be more likely for them to want to pull away, because they don't like seeing you in that state. And I mean, of course, you're going to feel that way sometimes. We all feel that way as parents. There's nothing wrong with that. But when a child can sense that you're coming to them and you're already kind of heightened and you're a little bit dysregulated, it's really going to make them want to run away, because they need to know that you're calm and you're confident and you've got this. So 2 kind of workarounds here. One is try and wait until your energy is kind of as level as it can be to have these conversations. And maybe for you, you kind of need to do what I do with like the 30-second comment, like just for yourself, like making it quick little comments here and there versus that long sit down, so that you don't get as worked up and as nervous. And if you are nervous, I would just name that off the bat. I would say, hey, like, I really want to talk to you about how a baby is made. Like, I want to give you the real information, because you're 10 now and I think it's important that you understand it. But I want you to know that, like, I'm just feeling a little bit nervous to have this conversation with you. And there's no reason for me to be nervous, because this is just the facts. But that's just kind of how I feel. But we're going to have it anyway, because one thing I know about us is that we can have uncomfortable conversations. If you just started off like that, then they know that you are aware of your own energy, but you're modeling again that even if you're nervous, even if you're embarrassed, even if you're frustrated, you want to have uncomfortable conversations with your kids, conversations that make you feel this way. And when you can do that and model to them that, like, we can talk about it anyway, even when it's hard, that is going to be your saving grace in the teenage years. Because in the teenage years and even the preteen years, tough things will come up. Things that your child is going to be like, I don't really want to tell my parents about this. But when they know and they have that knowledge from earlier in their childhood that I can have tricky conversations with my parents, I can talk to them even when what I'm about to say makes me nervous or makes them nervous or uncomfortable. It helps them know that your relationship is the safe place where they can always land. So I hope that this was helpful and that the tools I just gave you are ones that you can use across all sorts of challenges that might come up, whether it is, like I said, like the puberty talk, sex talk, body safety, someone's sick, you're moving, divorce. Like there's just so many tricky things that come up for kids. And I hope I can equip you to have those uncomfortable conversations. All right, friends, we'll talk again next week. Hey friends, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. We are glad that you are here. If you enjoyed today's episode and found it interesting, we'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a rating and a review. Scott and I actually sit down together and read them all. A 5-star rating helps us share our podcast and get these important messages out there. Thank you so much for listening, and we can't wait to talk to you again next time.